I am Rakhi. You can please call me Rakhi. So I've been here working here for about 20 years or around 22 years. I'm an infectious disease and an internal medicine physician. Unfortunately, seeing a few too many cases of coronavirus, and I would like to share my experience with you. So I'm no expert. Actually, I would like to start off by saying I don't think there are too many experts in the world of coronavirus now because there is so much to learn about it. There is so little that we know, and we have a long way to go. Um, to start off with, I would like to tell you about one of my patients who I saw today. This patient was about a 52-year-old gentleman who had contacted coronavirus while he was traveling back from Spain. And he was pretty healthy otherwise. But the sad thing is, he got intubated, subsequently extubated, and it has been about 3 months since he has had the infection and he still has shortness of breath. He still coughs. He's still not back to his baseline. So what I want you to know that you might get, if one gets coronavirus, you think that you will overcome the infection very quickly, but that's not the case. Many people have a lot of long-term sequela which has been associated with this virus. And some people are doing fine. They recover very well. Fortunately, about 80 to 85% patients do recover, but a large portion of them do have long-term sequela of persistent cough, shortness of breath, neurological disease, and other problems. So I would like to go to the next slide. This is my first case. I'm an HIV specialist as well. So this was a 47-year-old lady with HIV and high blood pressure who came into our hospital with complaints of dry cough, fever, and sore throat. What was interesting about this case, and I remember very distinctly that that day I was on call and I was called from the emergency room that there could be 5 potential cases of coronavirus. But this lady, when I talked to her, she said that her son is a flight attendant and he just came back home about 3 to 4 days ago. And the son didn't have any symptoms at all. And after 3 days, this lady got hypoxic. She got very short of breath. She had to be intubated. She remained intubated for about 2 weeks, finally had a tracheostomy, and then was weaned off oxygen. So after 3 long weeks of hospitalization, she finally went home. And what I would like to point out to you with this case is that there are many, many people who are asymptomatic carriers. So just because you do not have symptoms does not mean that you should not be socially isolated. Please do continue to socially isolate yourself, wear a mask, because many patients might not have symptoms and they could very well have the infection. So this is what I wanted you all to learn from this case. She did well. We did initially use azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine, which was the only drug that we had at that point in time. This was towards March. And the outcome was good. But the lessons to be learned from this case is 40% of the patients could be asymptomatic carriers. As Rashmi pointed out with her pathology slides about the extent of inflammation seen in the tissues, from a radiological standpoint, if I can point it out, you will see that there is a lot of inflammation on the CAT scan, and the lungs rapidly fill up with fluid. All these inflammatory cytokines are released in the cells, in the tissue, in the lung area, and we have very rapid progression of symptoms. We have often seen patients not needing oxygen at all to go to being intubated within just a couple of hours. So this is the progression of the disease, which is so rapid and can easily cause people to die. So That is one thing which I wanted to point out. The next was initially we had a lot of interest in the role of hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. It was, I myself, I'll tell you honestly that when I did not know about how hydroxychloroquine was working or not working, I went on prophylactic doses as well. But then there were studies which came out from essentially from France, and it says that hydroxychloroquine probably does not have much of a role, does not have much efficacy, but can cause side effects of arrhythmias. Now, during that early period of coronavirus, when this virus was taking, multiplying very rapidly, which it still is, unfortunately, there were people who would take hydroxychloroquine just from stores and take it in large doses. And in the US and Arizona, we had a couple, an Indian couple, who took hydroxychloroquine, which was used to clean fish tanks, and they took a large dose of it and they ended up dying. The husband died. So, as of now, as of today, hydroxychloroquine does not seem to be efficacious in the treatment of coronavirus. So, I would not recommend it. If any of you are thinking about taking chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, which was, I know, a big hot subject in India, it is not recommended. So the next case I have is a 32-year-old gentleman who I saw about a couple of weeks ago. He is also an interesting story. He went with his parents who were, in 60s and 70s to a store because they were remodeling their bathroom. So when people remodel bathrooms over here, they usually go to the store, buy the stuff, and remodel it themselves. So both parents and son were doing it, and both parents and son, all three of them got the coronavirus infection from the store. So he presented to our hospital with a 10-day history of fever, chills, cough, and shortness of breath. Again, very rapidly noted to be hypoxic with high oxygen requirements. So by that time, because this was about 2 weeks ago, we had more stuff in our pharmacy to use for this patient. We initially put him on remdesivir, which is an antiviral medication. This was followed by dexamethasone and then convalescent plasma, which Rashmi will talk later about. Unfortunately, he continued to worsen. He was subsequently intubated, and we had to transfer him to a tertiary care center. Tertiary care is a much bigger hospital, with a larger volume of patients dealing with COVID infections. So we had to transfer him there. I would like to talk a little bit about remdesivir, which is the antiviral medication which we used on him. I think it is available in India too. I was reading something about Bangalore, some pharmacy in Bangalore which is making remdesivir. It was initially used a couple years ago for Ebola, but it did not work well for Ebola at all. And this time around, we tried to use it for COVID. The only thing it does is that it reduces the hospital stay from 15 days to 11 days. There has not been much response in the rates of mortality, in the mortality rates, but the response time is reduced from 15 days to 11 days. Again, this was a study which came out in New England Journal of Medicine. And this was a study done at NIH, National Institute of Health. And they tried remdesivir in many patients to see how efficacious it was. And we usually give it intravenously, so the patient has to be in the hospital. The first dose is 200 milligrams, and then we use it for 4 more days in a dose of 100 milligrams. Again, this just shortens the recovery time in patients from 15 days to 11 days. And I heard it's very expensive in India. So if it is available, it is a good treatment option, but not the best, to tell you honestly. This is again about dexamethasone, which is, we use steroids, as Rashmi pointed out and alluded to earlier on. There is a lot of inflammation which goes on in the lung area, and all these inflammatory cytokines are released in the lungs, which includes T lymphocytes, macrophages, and other inflammatory cells are released. So dexamethasone, being a steroid, suppresses that, and it helps in recovery or prevention of hypoxia and prevents respiratory failure in patients. So this was again a study which was done, and it shows that if available, dexamethasone can reduce the mortality in patients who are getting progressively hypoxic. तो इसके लिए जैसे कि अगर आप स्टेरॉइड यूज करें या फिर प्रेडनिसोन यूज करें या फिर मेथिल प्रेडनिसोलोन यूज कर सकते हैं, उससे inflammation goes down, and once the inflammation goes down, your oxygen requirements will improve. So this was again a study done at NIH called Recovery Trial, and it reduces the 28-day mortality in patients who had high oxygen requirements. So we have been using this with some success in some of our patients. And if the patient is getting more and more, his oxygen requirements are getting worse, very much recommended to use steroids now. The next thing I would like to talk about is pregnant patients with COVID infection. जब भी हमारे पास हमारे वहाँ फ्लू वायरस होता है, तो हम हर एक प्रेग्नेंट वुमेन को फ्लू वैक्सीन देते हैं. So that prevents the failure rate or complication rates in pregnant women. But fortunately, so far we have seen that pregnant women, when they contact COVID-19, there is not much increase in mortality or morbidity, which is very, very reassuring. Like we see in elderly men, older people, and men. These are the two, class of people who have shown increased mortality. But fortunately, so far we have not seen this in pregnant women. This is a study which was done in China, and they studied about 118 women, and to check if how many of them would actually have died with COVID. And they said all of them were discharged and there were no deaths reported. Some of them did need oxygen and did need a non-invasive mechanical ventilation, but most of them did very well, and they were discharged home. This is in comparison to flu, where we see much higher rates of morbidity and mortality in pregnant women. So good thing for pregnancy that not much mortality seen. So next thing I'd like to talk about is children with COVID-19. I'm an adult physician, so I don't deal much with children. But of course, it is always something that is there at the back of our mind, that children were safe from COVID infection and they were not as infected as adults were, which was very reassuring. But lately, this was a study done in New York where they saw that they had Kawasaki-like presentation, which was a multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which resulted in rash, cardiac involvement, mucocutaneous involvement, and GI involvement. So a little bit more about this study, which was done in New York, and they checked about 191 patients who were children and who had the COVID infection. And what they found that many of these children did get to have cardiac or heart involvement. They had a rash, they had conjunctival involvement, they had nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So unfortunately, as we used to think that children are totally immune to COVID, that does not seem to be the case. And there are children who are presenting with complications related to the COVID virus, and it is most likely similar to a Kawasaki-like presentation. So something to take note of, that that children can get sicker. The last thing I would like to talk about is vaccines for COVID, because that has generated a lot of enthusiasm and interest, and billions of dollars are being pumped into manufacturing of vaccines. What we know right now on the front line, at least in the US, there are about 150 vaccines which are being developed, but there are two vaccines which have been on the forefront. One is a messenger RNA vaccine, and essentially, these are phase 3 trials which are going to be started soon on 30,000 people, I think by tomorrow or sometime next week. And it has shown good response. It has to be given in 2 doses, about 28 days apart. And so far, on the 45 patients that they tested this vaccine on, they had very good immune response, and they did have a good turnover, and they were immune to COVID infection. So this is one vaccine we are looking at closely. And the other vaccine is an Oxford COVID-19 vaccine, which is being, I think, manufactured in Pune, somewhere in Pune, and research is being done in Oxford. And this is a mutated form of adenovirus, and they somehow link it to the spike proteins, which generates an antibody response. So this is what I have to tell you about the vaccines. I would lastly like to take you to the last slide, which is, this is the flow chart that we use for our patients who have COVID infection. And the first thing is to check your oxygen levels. If your oxygen levels are fine, if it's not dropping, if you're not short of breath, you're okay. You don't need to panic. You can just stay at home and just make sure you drink plenty of fluids, stay hydrated. You can take Crocin or anything like that to reduce your fever. Do not use more ibuprofen, and then you will be fine. But if you are getting hypoxic, if your oxygen levels are going down, if you're uh, feeling short of breath when you walk from your bedroom to your bathroom, that's the time when you need to take notice and probably check yourself in, because there are treatment modalities which are available. What we usually do in our hospital, and this is what I will let you know, is that if the patient has had symptoms and he's having increasing oxygen requirements, we consider putting them on remdesivir. That's the antiviral medication I talked about. If they have been sick for less than a week, we use remdesivir. If they've been sick for more than 1 week, we try to use dexamethasone. I usually use everything which I have. So I'll use remdesivir, dexa, and convalescent plasma, which Rashmi will talk about as well. There is another IL-6 inhibitor called tocilizumab, which is not very commonly available, and we still have some anecdotal reports to say that it benefits some people. If it is available in India, that is also something which should be used. So that is all that I have to say, and I would be willing to take any questions later.